hot take right now, bro. Snow White is dumb as shit. So YouTube, we're gonna be reacting to Snow White, the original Grimm brothers fairy tale, animation, audiobook, and bedtime story. Now, I have never really watched Snow White, but if you guys have like any comparisons from seeing the actual like movie to this, definitely like, drop that in the comments.
Once upon a time, long ago in the deepest winter, the finest
Loud, I'm sorry.
and purest snow fell from the sky. Every snowflake resembled a white feather gently drifting to the ground.
The Queen of the Land sat by the window working on a delicate embroidery. Fascinated by the wild dance of the snowflakes, she opened the window to gaze further into the distance. She sat down on the frame made of black ebony and returned to her embroidery.
In a moment of carelessness, she pricked her finger with the needle, and 3 drops of blood fell onto the fresh snow on the windowsill. The red in the white snow appeared so beautiful that she thought to herself, "If I am granted a child, it shall bear this beauty within."
Okay, I'm sorry. Quick question: is this Snow White's mother?
It shall be as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as ebony.
Fate heeded her wish, and after some time she gave birth to a beautiful daughter.
The child had skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood,
Never mind.
and hair as black as ebony. Unfortunately, the queen was not granted a long life, and after a few years she passed away.
Damn.
A year after her death, a beautiful, though cold, woman entered the life of the king. The king fell for her beauty and made her his wife.
And with her a cold wind swept through the court. The warmth and kindness of the former queen vanished with each passing year.
The new queen possessed a magical mirror in her chambers, with which
wait
she
a minute.
spoke every day.
That's
She
not.
asked it the same question. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror answered, "Queen, you are the fairest in the land."
An answer that pleased her greatly, for she knew that the mirror could not lie.
Her beauty would shine above all others. But with each passing day, Snow White grew more and more beautiful.
She blossomed into a young woman, and soon the mirror answered the queen's question.
Okay.
"Queen, you are the fairest here, but Snow White is 1,000 times fairer than you."
Ooh.
Frightened by these words, anger and envy rose in the queen's heart. From that moment on, the mirror told her every day that she was no longer the fairest in the kingdom.
Damn.
With every glance at Snow White, her cold heart twisted with hatred and jealousy. Envy and pride grew in her bitter heart like weeds, until one day she could not find peace, even at night.
So she called for a huntsman and said to him, "Take the child out into the forest. I never want to see her again. Kill her
No.
and bring me her lungs and liver as proof."
Wow.
The huntsman obeyed the queen's command and led the poor child into the forest. There Snow White began to weep terribly and said, "Oh dear huntsman, please spare my life. I will run into the forest and never return."
The huntsman felt sorry for the young princess. She was such a beautiful young girl and had done no harm to anyone. It was wrong to kill her here. So he let her run away.
As she disappeared into the dark forest, a stone lifted from his heart, for he no longer had to commit this terrible deed.
Yet with a heavy heart, he thought that the poor child would likely be eaten by wild animals anyway. Before returning to the castle, the huntsman killed a young deer in the forest. He took its lungs and liver and brought them to the queen.
Smart.
With malicious joy, she admired the huntsman's catch.
She had the organs prepared in the kitchen, and that very evening she ate them with dark satisfaction. Every
Ew, you were
bite
gonna
made
eat
her
her,
tremble
bro?
with delight.
Meanwhile, Snow White wandered alone through the dark forest. She had strayed aimlessly, climbing over sharp stones and winding her way past thorns.
Wild animals crossed her path, but none harmed her. They merely leapt by, as though they wished to spare her.
She walked for hours until the sun was low on the horizon. Then, between the trees, she spotted a small house. Hesitantly, she approached and decided to enter, seeking refuge from the icy night.
Inside, everything was small, but clean and tidy, so Snow White felt no fear.
In the middle of the room stood a small table, with a bright white cloth draped over it.
It was set with 7 small plates, each with a spoon, a knife, and a fork beside it.
Oh,
7
this is
little
the
cups also
dwarves or
stood on the
something?
neatly laid table. She looked around further and saw 7 little beds lined up side by side.
Yeah, the dwarves.
They had snow-white sheets, and everything looked so inviting that she felt safe. Feeling hungry, she took a little from each plate, some vegetables and bread, and from each little cup she took a small sip of wine, not wanting to take everything from anyone.
When she had eaten her fill, she felt how tired she had become. The strain of the day weighed heavily on her limbs. She said a short prayer and tried out the beds. Some were too short, others too long, but the 7th was just right.
No sooner had she laid down than she fell into a deep sleep. As night fell, the masters of the house returned. There were 7 dwarfs who mined ore and dug for gemstones in the mountains.
Each of them carried a small candle, which they lit to illuminate the little house. As soon as it was bright again, the first dwarf noticed, "Who has sat on my little chair?"
The others looked around in surprise. The second asked, "Who has eaten from my little plate?"
The third, "Who has taken from my roll?"
The fourth, "Who has eaten my vegetables?"
The 5th, "Who has eaten with my little fork?"
The sixth, "Who has drunk from my little cup?"
When the 7th dwarf looked around, he spotted something in his bed. With wide eyes, he cried out, "Who is sleeping in my little bed?"
Curiously, the others came forward with their candles, and there, lying in the bed, was Snow White, deep and peacefully asleep.
"Oh my God!" they exclaimed in astonishment. "What a beautiful girl this is!" They gazed at the stranger for a long time, but they did not want to wake her and frighten her.
So they remained quiet. At last they went to rest, but since there was now 1 bed too few, they took turns sleeping. Each of them had an hour to admire the sleeping Snow White before the next one took their turn.
As dawn broke, Snow White awoke and saw a dwarf standing at her bedside. She jumped in fright, but then she noticed that in each of the other beds there was a dwarf.
The dwarf in front of her spoke in a gentle voice. "Do not fear. Here, you're safe."
One by one, the other dwarfs awoke, and together they gathered around their unexpected guest. "Who are you, and what is your name?" asked one of the dwarfs.
"My name is Snow White, and I am the daughter of the king and the late queen," the girl replied. "And how did you come to our house?" another asked, curious. Then Snow White told them about her stepmother, her murderous plan, the huntsman who had let her go out of pity, and her long, exhausting march through the dark forest.
Until she had finally discovered the little house. The dwarf said, "Will you take care of our household cook, make our beds, wash, sew, and knit? Will you keep everything neat and clean? Then you may stay with us, and we will provide for you."
"Yes," Snow White exclaimed joyfully, "I would be happy to." So she stayed with them. From then on, she kept the house in order.
In the morning, the dwarfs went to the mountains to mine for ore and gold, and in the evening they returned home, where Snow White had already prepared their meal. But all day long she was alone. The dwarfs warned her earnestly, "Beware of your stepmother. She will soon learn that you are still alive. Do not open the door to anyone."
Meanwhile, the queen believed she had eaten Snow White's lungs and liver. and was certain that she was once again the
Nasty ass.
fairest in the land. Satisfied, she stood before her mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" But the mirror answered,
Queen, you're the fairest here, but Snow White beyond the mountains with the 7 dwarfs is still 1,000 times fairer than you.
Oh my
A
god,
cold
bro.
shiver ran down
L
the Queen's
mirror
spine.
right now.
The mirror did not lie. The huntsman had deceived her. Snow White was still alive.
Anger and hatred burned fiercely in her heart. She would now seal the girl's fate herself. Only when Snow White was truly dead would she find peace.
The Queen was a master of disguise. So she cloaked herself as an old peddler woman, packed up her wares, and walked carefully through the forest.
Soon she neared the little house.
Oh,
From
the
afar, she called in
apple.
a
I heard.
friendly,
Okay.
croaky voice.
Fresh goods. Only the finest. Fresh goods.
Snow White,
Oh,
who'd been
you weren't
looking out the
supposed to
window,
leave
saw the
the
old woman
house.
standing there with her bundle. Good woman, what do you have to offer? She asked curiously.
The peddler woman smiled slyly. "Oh, what a pretty girl you are. I have the finest laces, just perfect for a young lady like you."
Snow White looked at the laces and saw no danger. The old woman seemed harmless, so she opened the door.
As soon as she was inside, the peddler woman busily spread out her wares. "Look, I have the best colours for you, but oh, you're not laced up properly, my dear. You cannot walk around like this."
With skillful hands, she took a firm lace, wrapped it around Snow White's waist, and suddenly pulled it tightly. Snow White gasped for air.
"Too tight," she wanted to say, but no sound came from her lips.
Relentlessly, the peddler woman pulled the lace even tighter and knotted it securely. Everything went black before Snow White's eyes. Her knees gave way, and with a soft sigh, she collapsed.
Wait,
With a malicious laugh,
Way.
What happened? What happened?
It securely. Relentlessly, the peddler woman pulled the lace even
sound came from her lips.
I'm sorry.
tightly.
Laced up properly. "Look, I have the best colours for you, but oh, you're not laced up properly, my dear. You cannot walk around like this."
With skillful hands, she took a firm lace, wrapped it around Snow White's waist, and suddenly pulled
Okay.
it tightly. Snow White gasped for air.
"Too tight," she wanted to say, but no sound came from her lips.
Relentlessly, the peddler woman pulled the lace even tighter and knotted it securely. Everything went black before Snow White's eyes. Her knees gave way, and with a soft sigh, she collapsed.
With a malicious laugh, the false peddler woman admired her work, then left the house and vanished into the deep forest.
Not long after, as the sun sank behind the mountains, the 7 dwarfs returned home. They called for Snow White, but no answer came.
With worried faces, they entered the little house, and there she lay, motionless on the floor.
Startled, they rushed to her side, gently lifting her up, and one of them noticed the lacing was far too tight.
"Quick, cut it open," he cried.
With a swift cut, one of the dwarfs severed the lace. Slowly, Snow White began to breathe again.
Her cheeks filled with colour, and with a faint breath she opened her eyes. The dwarfs sighed in relief, but they were certain this was no accident.
"That was your stepmother," one said gravely. "You must be careful," warned another. "Do not let anyone in again, no matter how friendly they seem."
Snow White promised to be cautious, but the wicked queen would not give up so easily.
When the dwarfs heard what had happened, they said, "The old peddler woman was none other than the wicked queen herself. Be careful, Snow White. Do not let anyone into the house if we are not with you. You must not forget this."
And so, the day came to an end, and Snow White once again escaped the danger.
The wicked queen hurried back to her castle. No sooner had she arrived than she stood before her mirror.
Okay, wait, I'm sorry. But what is the father doing? Where is the father? Is he perhaps dead or sick? What? Where is he? Why is he not worried about his kid?
Demanded confirmation of her beauty.
"Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" But the mirror spoke as before.
"Queen, you are the fairest here, but Snow White, beyond the mountains with the 7 dwarves is still 1,000 times fairer than you."
When she heard these words, her blood ran cold.
"That cannot be," she hissed. But the mirror showed her an image of Snow White already recovered from the attack.
"Damned child," growled the queen. "Very well,
God, bro,
I will
she's
think
like
of something
obsessed.
better."
And since she was skilled in dark magic and witchcraft, she already had an idea.
In the darkest of nights, she used a dark spell to create a poisoned comb, whose mere touch could be deadly.
Before dawn, she set off once more. This time, she took on the guise of another peddler.
A merchant woman who carried fine combs from house to house. The poisoned comb.
"Fresh goods, only the finest," she called with a honeyed voice as she approached the house of the dwarfs.
Once again, she knocked on the door, but this time Snow White was more cautious. She opened the window only slightly and looked out suspiciously.
"Go on, please," she said softly. "I cannot let anyone into the house."
"Oh, dear child," said the peddler woman with feigned kindness. "I only want to show you my beautiful goods. And surely it's allowed to look, isn't it?"
Uncertain, Snow White studied the woman. She seemed harmless. Her gaze fell upon the darkly gleaming comb that the peddler woman suddenly held up.
"Look," whispered the old woman, "a noble comb. A girl with such beautiful dark hair as yours must take good care of it. Only women truly understand such things, don't they?"
Snow White absent-mindedly stroked her hair. The dwarfs had no comb, and her hair was tangled and messy.
No,
"Let me
no.
show you," coaxed the peddler woman with a gentle smile. "You must be ashamed of how you look." Snow White bit her lip. It sounded so harmless.
Hesitantly, she opened the door a crack, and in the next moment the peddler woman swiftly stepped inside. With sure hands, she turned Snow White around and began to comb her hair with firm strokes.
1, 2, 3 strokes, and then she tucked the poisoned comb deep into Snow White's hair.
Oh,
We have got to the point where literally any
A dizziness overtook the girl. The world blurred, and a dark mist descended over her eyes. She tried to gasp for air, but her body no longer obeyed.
With a quiet sigh, she sank to the floor. "You terribly beautiful child," whispered the wicked woman, "and now it's all over for you." Then, with a cold laugh on her lips, she disappeared into the depths of the forest. But that day, the dwarfs returned home earlier than usual. They had made a rich find and wanted to celebrate their success.
When they entered the little house, they found Snow White lying motionless on the floor. "Not again!" cried one in shock.
Immediately they rushed to her side. One of the dwarfs noticed the dark comb stuck deep in her hair. "Look! This must be the cause."
With quick fingers, he pulled out the comb and washed her hair with fresh water. Slowly, colour returned to her cheeks. Her breathing deepened, and at last Snow White blinked open her eyes.
The dwarfs wanted to scold her. She had promised not to let anyone in. But at the sight of her gentle, confused expression, none of them could stay angry for long.
"Please, Snow White," said one softly, "do not be deceived. Your stepmother will not give up." "I will be careful," she promised. At sunset, the queen returned to her castle.
Pleased, she stood before her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" But the mirror answered as before.
"Queen, you're the fairest here, but Snow White beyond the mountains with the 7 dwarfs is still 1,000 times fairer than you."
Speechless with rage, she stood there, her hands clenched into fists.
bro, why is she so obsessed with her stepkid, bro? Because you have a whole kingdom to rule. Why are trying to mess with like a kid, bro? Like come on.
How could this girl always escape her fate? "Snow White shall die," she whispered with an icy voice. and if it costs my own life.
That night she found no sleep. She rummaged through her darkest book, sifted through ancient spells, and finally found the solution. An apple, but not an ordinary apple.
With dark magic, she prepared a fruit more beautiful than any other. Its skin was as red as blood, its other half as white as snow.
A tempting apple that would lure anyone to take a bite. But it was deadly.
This time she will not escape, whispered the Queen with a devilish smile. And with the dawn she set off once more. This time the Queen transformed into an old peasant woman with grey hair and a stooped back.
Her face was marked by deep wrinkles, and her hands trembled as she made her way through the forest.
In her woven basket she carried a selection of the most beautiful apples the eye had ever seen. Fresh apples. Buy fresh apples, she called in a croaky voice as she climbed the winding path to the dwarf's house.
At last she reached her destination. With a shaky hand she knocked on the door. Snow White approached the window, but this time she was even more cautious than before.
I am selling fine apples, young lady, the peasant woman spoke kindly.
I am sorry, Snow White replied hesitantly. I cannot let anyone into the house, and I cannot buy anything either.
The peasant woman sighed deeply and pretended to be greatly disappointed. Then I've climbed this steep hill for nothing, and with my heavy basket. Oh, what bad luck I have.
She sank down onto a tree stump as though she needed to rest, gazing at Snow White with kind eyes.
Why are you so fearful, my child? Are you afraid someone wants to poison you?
Snow White eyed the old woman uncertainly.
I can
How do you
ease
know
your
about that?
worry, the peasant woman continued softly. Look, I will prove it to you.
She took the most beautiful apple from her basket, red and shining like blood, and sliced it in half with a small knife.
Here, she said, holding out the red half to Snow White. This one is for you. Then she raised the white half to her lips and took a visible delight in biting into it. Delicious, she exclaimed, finishing her half in 3 hearty bites.
Snow White watched her closely. When she saw the old woman eat her part of the apple and remain well, her fear began to fade.
Well, child, won't you at least do me the favour of trying it? Asked the old woman with a gentle smile.
Don't eat it.
Snow White nodded slowly and took the red half of the
Oh.
apple in her hand.
She hesitated for a moment, but then she took a bite.
No sooner had she swallowed a piece than the world around her began to sway. Everything went dark before her eyes. Her fingers dropped the apple. She stumbled back a step, then collapsed motionless to the ground.
The wicked queen bent over the lifeless girl with an icy smile. White as snow, red as blood, black as ebony, she whispered triumphantly.
This time, the dwarfs cannot revive you. Then she turned away and vanished into the shadows of the forest.
At sunset, she reached her castle and
Bruh, hot take right now, bruh. Snow White is dumb as shit. This is why I cannot watch Snow White. This is why I cannot watch Snow White. Because bruh, I feel like I will be rage baited for real.
smile crept across her face. Finally, she had won.
The fire of her envy was extinguished, and for the first time in a long while, her dark heart found peace.
When the dwarfs returned home that evening, they found Snow White lying on the ground, motionless, cold, without a breath.
No, no, cried one of them in horror.
They hurriedly searched for a poisoned comb, a noose, anything they could remove, but they found nothing.
They loosened her bodice, washed her face with water and wine, and tried everything to bring life back to her.
But Snow White remained lifeless. This time the queen had succeeded in her goal.
For days the 7 dwarves sat round Snow White and wept bitterly. 3 days and 3 nights, one after the other, they watched over her, unable to bury her in the earth.
For even though she was dead, she had lost none of her beauty. Her face remained soft and alive. Her cheeks still bore a rosy glow, and her lips were as red as they had been the day she had bitten the poisoned apple.
We cannot bury her in the dark earth, the dwarfs decided. We cannot bring ourselves to do it. So they built a coffin of pure glass so that everyone could see her from all sides.
With golden letters they wrote on it, "Snow White, the fairest of all the princesses."
Then they carried the coffin to a mountain, and one of the dwarfs stayed with her at all times to watch over her.
The animals of the forest came to mourn her, deer and foxes, birds and rabbits, and the years passed.
One day, a prince rode through the forest. He took the path that led over the mountain, and suddenly his gaze was drawn to a glimmer between the trees.
Curious, he stepped closer and saw the glass coffin in which the most beautiful girl he had ever seen lay.
Snow White, he read in golden letters. Truly, Snow White, he murmured in awe.
White as snow, lips red as blood, and hair as black as ebony.
Behind him, the dwarf who was keeping watch stepped forward. The fairest of them all, he said softly. The prince turned to him.
Let me take the coffin. I will give you as much gold as you desire. The dwarf shook his head gravely.
For no gold in the world will we part with it. The prince looked down at Snow White with sorrow in his eyes.
Then give it to me as a gift. I cannot live without seeing her. She would have become my bride had I known her in life. Even in death, I want to honor and cherish her as the dearest thing in the world.
Bruh, I just met her.
The dwarf felt that the prince spoke the truth. So he called the other dwarfs together, and after much deliberation, they reluctantly agreed.
With the utmost care, the prince's servants lifted the coffin onto their shoulders and carried it down the valley. But on the steep path, one of them stumbled over a root.
The coffin was jolted, and with a faint cough, the piece of poisoned apple dislodged from Snow White's throat. Her chest rose, her breath.
Wait. I thought it was a prince who woke her up with a kiss. I saw bits and pieces. I did not watch the whole movie, but I saw bits and pieces. I thought it was a kiss.
Returned. Slowly she opened her eyes. "Oh God, where am I?" she whispered, confused.
The prince stared at her, speechless.
And how did the... Never mind. Put
Then
it in
he
the
stepped
comments.
forward, his heart pounding. "You're with me."
Gently he took her hand, and as he told her what had happened, he spoke the words that came deep from his soul, whether alive or in eternal sleep.
"You are the dearest thing in the world to me. I cannot live without you." And Snow White looked at him and smiled. "Come with me to my father's castle and become my bride," the prince said softly. "I will honor and protect you so that no harm shall ever come to you again."
Snow White gazed at him with shining eyes. She saw the sincerity in his gaze, the warmth in his smile. "Yes," she answered joyfully.
Pause again, I'm sorry. How old is Snow White? And how old is the prince? Comment.
"I will go with you."
And so they rode together to the prince's castle. There he had the message proclaimed that a grand wedding would be held. The entire kingdom was invited to celebrate the happiness of the young couple.
The news of the wedding spread quickly and reached the ears of Snow White's stepmother.
Where's
Vain
the
as she
father?
was, she donned her most magnificent gown, adorned herself with sparkling jewels, and stepped once more before her magical mirror.
With a self-satisfied smile, she asked,
"Mirror, mirror on the wall,
Oh shit.
who is the fairest of them all?"
But this time the mirror replied, "Queen, you're the fairest here, but the young queen to whom you are heading is 1,000 times fairer than you."
A cold shiver
Oh.
ran down her spine.
It
Her
did
heart
say Snow
began
White.
to pound wildly. "No, this cannot be," she cried out, stepping back.
She did not want to go to the wedding. Just the thought that another, someone younger, more beautiful had surpassed her made her snort with rage.
Yet her curiosity would not let her rest. Who was this mysterious bride who had dared to outshine her?
Bro, she's gonna
And
be
so,
big mad.
the queen went to the celebration, dressed in splendid robes, her face a mask of pride and suspicion.
When she entered the great hall, she stood frozen in her tracks. There on the throne sat Snow White, alive and more beautiful than ever. Her heart raced. Her vision flickered.
No, this could not be. Snow White was dead. She had seen it with her own eyes. But there she sat in royal attire with a gentle smile on her lips, beside her husband, the prince.
A cold shiver ran down the wicked queen's back. Her envy and hatred boiled within her, nearly driving her mad.
The servants had long known of the atrocity she had committed, and so a judgment was passed upon her.
As punishment for her wickedness, the servants brought forth iron slippers, which were heated over a coal fire until they glowed red.
Then they forced the wicked queen to put on the burning shoes.
Oh.
She screamed in pain, but there was no mercy. She had to dance.
And
Damn!
so she leapt and staggered on her burning soles across the hall, spinning and stumbling until her strength failed her.
With one final agonizing scream, she fell dead to the ground.
Now the kingdom was freed from her evil, and peace returned. The prince and Snow White lived happily and lovingly together.
And if they have not died, they are still living today. By the way, if you'd love to hear more fairy tales and stories, you'll find a rich and magical selection on our YouTube channel.
W video. Snow White is still dumb as shit, for real. W husband for taking care of that wicked ass bitch. That's gonna be it for this video. Take care, stay blessed, be cool. I wish you like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. I'll see you guys another time. Bye.